I mean, I think we need a Freakiest Friday now with Jamie Lee Curtis water skiing. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainely Movies. Today I'm going to be ranking the 3 theatrically released movies in the Freaky Friday franchise as part of my franchise Rankography series. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content, like reviews, rank lists, and recommendations. So what is a Rankography exactly? Well, it's my ranking of a filmography, whether that be a director's output, an actor's appearances, or even an entire franchise. My rankographies are based on personal preference, and I rank movies according to how much I enjoyed them, rather than any specific technical merit or attribute. Remember, this is just my ranking, not the ranking, so be sure to post your own personal ranking of the Freaky Friday franchise in the comments below. These days, we seem to talk about Disney live-action remakes a lot. In almost every case, we're referring to a live-action remake of one of their beloved animated classics. But on very rare occasion, we're actually talking about a live-action remake of a live-action film. Freaky Friday is one of those cases, with not only a remake, but also now a sequel to that remake. This is actually a bit of a unique franchise, because technically there are 4 other films that could be considered part of it. The first film spawned 2 loosely connected, little seen and little remembered made-for-TV sequels, Summer Switch and Billions for Boris. And then there were 2 other remakes. The first was a 1995 made-for-TV remake that was released as part of the Wonderful World of Disney anthology series. The second was a Disney Channel original movie, released in 2018, based on the 2016 stage musical. Maybe someday I'll decide to review and include those 4 made-for-TV offshoots, but for now, we're just going to focus on the core franchise and the 3 theatrically released films. I've already reviewed all 3 of these movies on this channel, so if you want to check those out for some more in-depth thoughts on each of them, I'll put links in the description below, and I'll also link them up in the cards as we go along. Alright, let's get this rankography started. Coming in at number 3, Freaky Friday, the 1976 version. It's not often that the first film of a franchise ends up at the bottom for me. And while I still get a good deal of enjoyment from this movie, it is unquestionably the weakest in the series. This wasn't the first body-swapping film, but it was one of the most influential. Released during the later portion of Disney's live-action movie boom of the 60s and 70s, this fantasy comedy family film was based on a 1972 novel with a very unique premise, but a very bare-bones plot. And unfortunately, that mostly carried through to the film, although it did introduce a very important element to the story: the mother's point of view throughout the whole scenario. The mother-daughter swap is a really fun concept, and this film really plays up the humorous side of things, but I do wish it had leaned a little bit more into the emotion and thematic elements of that, rather than just tacking on a solitary moment in each of the film's bookends. The premise is extremely solid, but there's really not all that much to the actual story. It's a very gag-based movie, a series of hijinks and chaotic comedy of errors as both mother and daughter try to live a day in one another's shoes, mostly unsuccessfully. We've got exploding typewriters, overstuffed washing machines sudsing all over the place, and of course the classic standby, water skiing? It's all entertaining to watch, but difficult to really care about or become captivated by, because the plot doesn't really amount to much for these 2 body-swapped characters. However, those 2 characters, and specifically the casting and performances, are what make this movie work and help hold it together, even when the plot is unable to do so. Jodie Foster plays Annabelle, the sloppy, rebellious teenager, and she's great in that role, but almost fits even better when she's playing Annabelle's mom. After all, Foster always had this mature presence to her that always made her feel older than she actually was. But the best of the swap-based humor was definitely given to Barbara Harris, who plays Ellen, Annabelle's mother. She's fine as true Ellen, but really shines when playing the Annabelle-inhabited version of her role, letting loose in a silly and joyful kind of way. As I said, the emotional side of those characters and their thematic comeuppance is disappointingly minimal, as is their actual screen time together, but the likability and goofiness of their individual performances help to keep this movie aloft. Coming in at number 2, Freakier Friday. The newest entry in this franchise, this film was one I was very curious about. This is a legacy sequel to a remake, coming out 22 years after the fact. That, understandably, isn't something that instills much confidence, but despite that, this is actually surprisingly decent. As a Freaky Friday movie, it has all the same basic plot bones as all of the other films, with its familial body switch storyline. But I will say that this movie doesn't just stick with the expected, and actually introduces some sort of interesting new things to put its own unique twist on the story. Rather than just giving us another mother-daughter switch, we actually get two body swaps here. Anna switches with her daughter, Harper, in usual franchise fashion. But in addition to that, Tess switches with her soon-to-be step-granddaughter, Lily. This is the first time we've seen a double switch, and also the first time we've gotten a double generational jump, which introduces some unique fun to the story. It's nice to see a sequel like this try to do something a little different like that, but the actual execution of this more involved double swapping storyline leaves a little something to be desired. It gets a bit convoluted as these characters go off on a series of sort of mini adventures that are separate from one another, and with 4 swapped characters to keep track of, it does get a little tough to know who's who at times. This movie still got a decent overarching storyline, and a little bit of heart comes through by the end, but the film definitely prioritizes comedy a lot more than its immediate predecessor, almost at the expense of some of the slower emotional moments. It is funny, but trends towards the physical comedy and slapstick gag-based humor of the original film than the dialogue and humor sequence-based comedy of the 2003 film. But even though the comedy isn't quite as good, the performances are pretty close, with the newcomers doing a decent job in their young becomes old roles, and Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis stealing the show, portraying 16-year-olds trapped in 37 and 65-year-old bodies respectively. It's obviously not as good as the 2003 movie, but it's still pretty decent, especially with the nostalgia-induced boost, and Pink Slip still rocks. So that means my number 1 Freaky Friday film is Freaky Friday, the 2003 version. You know, I don't think I've ever put a remake at the top of one of my Rankography videos before, and despite that, I don't think this is a very controversial pick. This film was one of the many 90s and early 2000s Disney live-action remakes of their own 60s and 70s live-action movies. Nostalgia often runs on about a 30-year generational cycle, and this was certainly the case with these films. And I, being the age that I am, saw the benefit of that as a kid, being able to grow up with movies like The Parent Trap, also starring Lindsay Lohan, Flubber, That Darn Cat, Homeward Bound, and of course, Freaky Friday. Like I said in my intro, this 2003 movie is actually technically the second remake of this film, and as is the case with most remakes, you kinda expect diminishing returns. So you would anticipate that this movie wouldn't be any good, but somehow it is, improving on the original film in nearly every way. It's got the same great premise, but fleshes things out for both the story and characters, actually leaning into the mother-daughter understanding and reconciliation themes. The story is also more of an actual story this time. The humor is definitely still there, but is much more script and bit-based than it is a series of slapstick gags. But there's also emotion this time, and actual character motivation. Both Anna and Tess have an event that's truly important to them, that's gonna get messed up by the switch. Anna's band audition, and Tess's wedding rehearsal. And that helps to build plot foundation for the thematic side of the story. Add to that the ticking clock urgency of the impending wedding, and you've got a story that's actually compelling. Of course, I can't forget to talk about the characters here. We do have some fun secondary characters, like Ryan, for instance, but just like with the original movie, the casting and performances of the 2 body-swapping leads are key here. Lindsay Lohan has the "you're ruining my life" overdramatically angsty 2000s pop-punk teen persona down pat, and is also very entertaining when taking on the motherly, generationally out-of-touch role of Tess, too. But the real standout of this film is absolutely Jamie Lee Curtis, who's really able to show off her comedic chops here as an angry and rebellious 15-year-old trapped in the body of a 45-year-old. Alright, so that's my rankography of the Freaky Friday franchise. 3 theatrical movies, 3 generational jumps, and not nearly enough water skiing. What does your ranking look like? I'd love to see some reasoning for your order, so be sure to post it in the comments below. Remember, I've already reviewed all 3 of these movies, so you could check those videos out if you want some more in-depth discussion of each, as well as my ratings, pros and cons, and even tailored film recommendations. And if you're interested in buying any of these movies, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy in one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them if you're in the market for any of these movies or anything else. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this Rankography, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe if you're at it to see more videos like this, as well as movie reviews. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainely Movies, the way life should be.